Thanks for checking in from wherever you are in the world. Welcome to Practical Wisdom for Leaders, the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. I'm your host, Scott J. Allen, and each week I invite executives and scholars to explore the real work of leadership. This podcast is part of a global community committed to helping leaders thrive. If you find these conversations valuable, connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to the podcast, and share this episode with others. To learn more about me, visit www.scottjallen.net. And now, here's today's episode. Okay, everybody, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for checking in wherever you are in the world. This is Scott Allen, your host, and this is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. So we hope to see you in Toronto this fall. If you are not familiar with International Leadership Association or the global conference, ILA, look it up. It's awesome. It's been my academic home for years. Now, today, I have a legend, and so I'm so excited for this conversation, Rob. This is Rob Kaiser, everybody. He is an author. He has written several books. This is one of my favorites. And, you know, I can't believe I've been doing this for 5.5 years now. And I am just so excited that we're having this conversation. And so I know you're an avid baseball player. I was actually and fan, used to play. Maybe you're not. Maybe you play now. I don't know. But I was in a field last night. It was the district finals. My son was involved in 3 of the 5 big plays that won the game. So it was just this wonderful evening of baseball, perfect weather out. And so I know, based on some of our previous conversations, that sports are important to you, sir.
Absolutely. They're near and dear to my heart. And hey, congratulations to your son. And I imagine you're still riding on that.
Yes, for sure.
American pastime.
Exactly. And I know that kind of, when we talk about like what got you into leadership, let's talk a little bit about that, because I have a feeling maybe sports were involved.
Well, they absolutely were, but I got to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Kierkegaard's got that great quote, life can only be understood in retrospect, but has to be lived forward.
Yes.
My intro to leadership really followed that, Scott.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 10, 11, 12 years old, I was really fortunate. I got to play on a couple of sports teams, a football, Pop Warner, and a travel baseball team, the Dell Unser League, before they had Little League everywhere. And this is in central Illinois. And man, both of those teams were coached by 2 incredible men.
Mm.
I'm a young kid. I don't know anything. What I did know was Coach Mayberry darn near killed us in preseason 2-a-day workouts at 10 years old. I remember he was always walking around, boys, if you feel like you're about to die, you're halfway there.
Sounds like you had heard Brooks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, we were young. We didn't know what we were doing. But here was the thing Coach Mayberry really did, was he taught us to play as a team. And it wasn't just him. He had a coaching staff of guys he worked with at a local factory. This wasn't daddy ball. They didn't have kids. They were passionate about young boys becoming men in the game of football.
Yeah.
And I remember the night before our first game, he gets us all down there at the end of practice. We're all going to take a knee, get a water. And he's down on his knee too, kind of scanning, looking at all of our eyes. He's got this raspy voice and that. And he says, boys, I don't know much, but I do know one thing. A team apart is easier to rip apart than a team together. And we're all like, yeah. Then he says, you might not be the most talented. You might not win, but I will guarantee at the end of 4 quarters, they will know they've been hit by the Mount Zion Braves.
You're fired up. You're fired up.
Just thinking about Coach Mayberry the hairs are literally standing up back of my neck. I didn't know what I was watching, Scott. I just knew what I felt.
Yeah.
We had really good success. I think we lost 1 game in 3 seasons.
Wow.
And I'm still in touch with a lot of those guys. But let me make the contrast for you. Here's the connection. I get to high school, same group of guys.
Yeah.
Mediocre team. Coach not nearly as committed to the team. A lot of politics. superintendent's kid gets the start, even though he should be third on the depth chart, that kind of thing.
Yep.
And I checked out of sports by my junior year. I got into rock and roll bands instead. I thought, enough of this.
Yeah.
But it was in college, in an organizational psychology class, sectional leadership, it all snapped into focus. That was the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And the difference that one individual makes. I mean, it's just whether that's in the classroom, whether that's on the ball field, whether that's as your manager, direct supervisor. I mean, my first job, I was a janitor. Like literally every night for 4 years in high school, I went to school, went to practice. After practice, I was a diver. So after practice, still smelling like chlorine, I drove to Marsden building maintenance and I cleaned bathrooms. And at the kind of, when I tell you that doesn't sound very fun, but it's probably one of the best jobs I ever had. I had a supervisor in Mike, and Mike was this big guy. He basically sat down next to the dumpster all night long. But Mike cared about us. Mike helped us understand why what we're doing was important. He would praise us when we did do a great job and when we got like kudos from some of the different offices in the building. We actually took pride. He would say things like, yeah, my boss is coming, but I'm not worried because you all have this place looking perfect, right? And so it's this weird thing where I'm cleaning 12 bathrooms in a night, right? That's at least part of the night for 4 hours. But we had this pride in either the pattern in the vacuuming on the carpet. He would come down and he would say, great patterns up there in, IBM, And so, but that could have been a horrible job. And then I was working with some other guys and we became friends and some of my friends came and worked there. That made it even more fun and enjoyable. I'd listen to music. We're talking about rock and roll. I'd put in Neil Young's Harvest Moon and I'd just kind of start vacuuming and emptying trash, But he was an incredible guy. Made all the difference in the world. All the difference in the world.
What I hear in that, though, is you didn't work with fear. The standard was the standard.
Yeah.
The pattern in the carpet, the really clean bathrooms. My boss is coming, I'm not working. The standard was the standard.
Yeah.
You had the support and the belief in your ability to meet or exceed the standard.
Exactly.
Those things.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so, you have this kind of this epiphany. And so let's talk a little bit about your point of view on leadership. What are some of the highlights and hallmarks of how you think about this topic?
Well, first thing, leadership is hard.
Yes. Yes. It's like parenting. It's hard. It's just difficult.
Leadership is the second most humbling job in the world.
It's a mirror. If you're brave enough to look into it, there's a lot of learning for you.
Yeah. Well, and you hit on something right there. If you're not a learner, you're not going to go far on a leadership track. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Because it's so darn demanding. I mean, look, the buck stops here. The job is really, really complex. You got to deal with business problems. You got to deal with people problems. And there are two sets of problems. Our brains are there's two sides to our brain. We've got an analytical, task-oriented part of our brain, the prefrontal. We've got an emotional, relational part of the brain, the older limbic system. And these things are sometimes in conflict and all that. But the point is, business is fundamentally about money and people. Analytically solving the money, organizational problems, dealing with the people problems, that right there is a huge, huge challenge to toggle back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah. Not easy. Not easy at all. Not for the faint of heart.
Well, and genetics, I mean, I don't want to get too much into the brain sciences, but the genetics show us that we come out of the chute disposed more toward one side or the other generally. So, back to your learning point, Scott, I think one of the big challenges to become a great, well-rounded, versatile leader is the self-awareness that comes of knowing what comes naturally to me. Okay, I'm really analytical and good with the numbers, problem solving. You know what? I'm going to have to lean into the people side and raise my game over here if I'm going to become an effective leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's hard work.
It's not easy. And that tension, people, task, people, results, relationships, however we want to kind of talk about that. Yeah, I agree 100%. I think most people have, they jump in and they get right to the task, or Maybe they're a little more skilled at the relational side, but maybe they struggle a little bit with difficult conversations, conflict, a lack of harmony sometimes. It's kind of baked into the role and setting deadlines, hard numbers that we need to meet. It's fascinating what it requires of an individual.
That's exactly it. So the first thing I would say on my point of view of leadership is it's really dang hard, and largely because you've got to strike these various balances.
Yeah.
Of course, you just named the big one that the leadership scholars have always talked about, task people, what have you.
Yep.
But we can throw in a number of dichotomies or dualities that feel paradoxical. Short-term results, long-term value creation, innovation, stability to get traction. I mean, there's any number of these things. Then I always go back to that Taoist symbol, the yin yang.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the reminder that it's not either or, it takes both and in a harmonic kind of dynamic balance.
Yes. Yes. Well, and this gets into your perspectives around versatility, right? I mean,
exactly. That's where it all came from. I mean, look, so I go back, 30 odd years when I was at the Center for Creative Leadership, and I'm getting exposed to all this stuff fresh out of graduate school.
Yeah.
I'm like a kid in a candy store. This is like mecca for leadership.
Well, you were with some pretty incredible thinkers, right? I mean, that the water in that space at that time, not that it's not there now, but that there's some legends, right?
It was a special time to play cards with Mike Lombardo, have lunch with Morgan McCall, to have Randy White take me out for a drink. All of these, luminaries. And I was a kid, I fresh and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But here's where it came together in my head, Scott. First off, Morgan and Mike's seminal studies on derailment. Of course, they were done 10 years before I got there.
Yep.
But one of the key insights was that, which was fresh thinking at the time, was a strength can become a weakness through overuse.
Yep.
Right? The same things that got these people to the top, took them over the edge in excess. And then I'm looking at all these assessments. I was an assessment nerd. I guess you could say I was part of the analytical brain, a little bit bigger than the relational. I loved assessment, psychological measurement. And I'm reviewing all of these tools we use for giving feedback, self-awareness, all that stuff. And nowhere in 360s at the time did I see any space for strengths overused. No, we had all these 5-point scales, as if more was better. But yet we got this great insight that too much of a good thing isn't so good. Well, gosh, shouldn't we reflect that in our ways of helping executives learn, grow, and development?
Yes. Yes.
So the first thing I did, I should say we did, as we kind of put this point of view together, was create a place in assessment for too much of a good thing. So instead of the 5-point scale, we rethought it as the Goldilocks scale.
Yep.
Too little, just right, too much. And give those coworkers a way to let leaders know when they've crossed that line.
Yeah. Yeah.
But here's the other thing that happened. I studied philosophy in college as well as psychology and statistics. And from Hegel all the way back to the Taoists and all of that stuff, I was always taken by this interplay of opposing forces.
Yeah.
And you look at the leadership literature, going back 100 plus years, people who've studied what leaders do have always formulated in contrasting pairs. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Transformational, transactional, task, people, innovation, stability. So it's like we've got this too much scale. It's like, oh, okay, well, let's define the behavior model to apply that to in a yin-yang sort of fashion. We came up with the terms forceful enabling for the interpersonal part, strategic and operational for the organizational part.
Yeah.
And when you measure behaviors in those pairs of categories on the too much, too little, what we started to see in the data was what you would expect, the seesaw, too much of one, too little of the other. And very few leaders who struck a balance on how they lead, what they lead, strategic and tactical.
Yeah. What have you learned about their own perspective on their balance over the years? Is it often skewed based on what others thought?
Great question. You know, one of the things I have become really sensitized to and compassionate about is just how hard self-awareness is to achieve.
Yes.
Now, listen, when I was
Again,
younger,
the mirror, if you're willing to look in it.
exactly. But so I'm young, I'm modeling all the data, and you've got, you look at the self-rating, at the coworker ratings, coworkers put the skews, self-ratings barely track with coworker ratings. That's a robust finding. And it's easy. Oh, look at all these clueless managers who aren't self-aware. Ha ha ha. Well, then I got my 360. Oops.
Yep. There's it's the mirror. Oh, I can be perceived this way. I didn't know, right? It's like my wife about a couple of weeks ago, I travel quite a bit. And so I had gotten home. It was probably around like 6:30 p.m. So everyone's at the dinner table and I kind of enter the space and I just start cleaning things up and I start asking questions. And so the next morning on our walk, my wife looks at me and she says, "Can I give you some feedback?" And I said, "Sure." And she's like, "Don't, just take this in, don't respond, but you can come in a little hot sometimes. And just, when you're coming home, slow your roll, slow down, just kind of integrate, like just check in, don't start cleaning everything." And I had no clue that's how I was showing up. I mean, I live and breathe this stuff, right? But again, like, are you known as someone who's at least open to feedback, who's willing to hear other perspectives? But it's hard. It's not easy to do, right?
It's not. Well, first off, I want to say it sounds like your wife could be a great coach.
She is. She is. She often says
probably deserves an award of some sort too. But
I think her phrase is, "I made you into the man you are." So that's the phrase.
In my house, Molly says, in our house, Molly says she domesticated me.
Exactly.
There's a lot of truth in that. But I want to bring it back around. The reality of self-awareness, Scott. Yeah. It's biological.
Say more.
There's only one person in the world you can't see. I mean, it starts there and then add the psychological parts. And, we are the center of our kind of meaning-making universe, the story we tell ourselves. And then that's hardwired as part of survival. You got to have all of that. But again, the learning challenge for a great leader is to transcend that sort of egocentric worldview, embrace a broader perspective, and learn how to see the world through the eyes of others, including yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say someone wants to become better. They want to be a great leader. They want to be more self-aware. What are some things you think about there? How do you think about that puzzle? Because that for me is just, I often say my mission is, how do we better prepare people to serve in these really challenging roles? Because again, back to what you said originally, we know what it feels like to be in the presence of someone who's doing this work well. And we know what it feels like to be in the presence of someone who struggles. They do lean too far to task. They aren't self-aware in how they're showing up. That's a hard place to be. And ultimately it costs organizations, Gallup would say billions and trillions around the world, right? When you have people in positions of authority who maybe aren't doing that well. So how do you think about that? I'm super curious.
Yeah, it's a great question, one I have thought about for a long time. I don't claim to have all the answers. I have a way of thinking about it that seems useful.
Nice.
And you touched on it. I mean, look, at the Temple of Apollo 3,000 years ago, one of the three maxims etched in the top was know thyself. Right? So I think it starts with self-awareness in many ways. You've got to somehow find a way to get that mirror.
Yeah. Yep.
Is it a formal 360 feedback? Is it a spouse or a trusted colleague or a boss who cares about you, who will level with you?
Yep.
The good and the bad. I'm not saying just the negative stuff. I mean, people have just a hard time seeing their strengths as they do their weaknesses.
Yes, 100%, right? Oh, you think I'm, yes, 100%. Yep.
So I like to say it starts with self-awareness, which practically speaking is really about understanding how your operating system runs so you can come up with hacks and cheat codes to build that operating system out to handle the whole panoply of stuff you got to do as a leader.
Great word, right? That was a good use of that word. I love it. Well, and I love the introduction here of the hacks. And so I'll give you one example. So going back to my wife, her mind thinks of others in a beautiful way. I mean, she's been conditioned for years. Her mom thinks of others, and she just grew up. And it's beautiful because my daughters will come home and they'll start making cookies or something, and they'll say, I need to make cookies tonight. We'll say, oh, what's going on? And they'll say, oh, well, Franny had a rough day, so I want to cheer her up tomorrow. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, that is awesome. For me, I don't have that neural path just as a way of being yet. So literally a hack, and it might sound lame to some listeners, but it's helpful. 2 tasks. The second task I do every day, 1 act of kindness, 1 act of gratitude. It causes me to pause, slow down, look at who has gone above and beyond for me, think a client, think someone who kind of did something nice for me along the way. And, that's 14 a week. Yeah. And that's hundreds over a year. And so I need that hack. It's a daily, it just pops up on my task list every day. And I need that reminder because that's the kind of person I want to be, but I'm not there yet. Kind of like running. I'm not there yet. I have a growth mindset.
No. I don't think we ever get there. The key is that we keep going.
Yeah.
But I love that. I mean, you just had a simple lo-fi, digitally. It's a digital string around your finger.
Yeah.
To remind you to do something that's not going to come natural.
Exactly.
One of the things I coach execs to, once they get clarity in their own words, their own way of relating to how that operating system works, I say, great, let's work on the power of the pause now. Mm-hmm. When you're ready to go this direction, just a quick micro pause. What's the thing I'm not thinking about?
Yeah.
And sometimes that means, I need to switch gears. I need to bring people along before I charge on. Other times it's, I could do that, but I'm not going to for this reason. And I coach them. I say, executive judgment and discernment is key here.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you always have to go the other way. I'm just telling you to consider.
Pause. Yeah. Is your mind even going there? And that's awesome if their mind does, right?
Well, I'm going to go back to the Temple of Apollo. One of the other maxims was surety brings ruin.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Huh. There were 3 of them. My wife and I just went to Greece last year. And I really wanted to go to Delphi and see this story.
I've been to Delphi, but I didn't get this. So this is awesome.
Well, the facade's no longer there.
Yeah. Okay. This was in the museum. Here's how it used to look. Quick story. We're in Greece and we're at the Museum of the Acropolis. And we had an archaeologist give us a tour for the day, and it was the most brilliant, wonderful, awesome day. And we're kind of walking through the Museum of the Acropolis, and he's just frustrated with the British Museum. He's like, well, that's in the British Museum, that piece is in the British Museum, and he's frustrated. So 2 summers ago, we got to the British Museum. We were like, well, shit, they do have a lot of stuff here. It's all here. But that's awesome. Okay, so the surety brings ruin. Is that what it was? Oh, that's awesome.
Exactly what it was.
Yep,
and I'll connect it to where we're at here, that cocksure, this is what I'm going to do. That's what's going to get you in trouble, because not every time you pause and look at the other side are you necessarily going to.
Sure.
But sometimes you are. And if you never look, that becomes your blind side. And that's when you get into trouble.
Yeah. And even a leader who can say, what's the downside of us moving in this direction? At least creating a little bit of space for people in the room to have the psychological safety to say, well, this could happen. But if you don't have that pause or have that gear to shift into, that quote on the temple is brilliant. It really is.
Well, just to bring it on, since you're so interested in it, the three quotes that I'm told.
Yeah.
We're
there.
Right? It was know thyself, nothing in excess, surety brings ruin.
Yeah.
Can you see how all of that stuff is baked into the versatility framework and assessment?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I didn't even know that. I mean, I was exposed to the ancient Greek philosophy in college and all that, but that wasn't my driving thought, oh, I got to represent this and transpose it to leadership. It was, I think, stumbling into other great thinkers, other great works on leadership, and kind of rearranging the pieces in a new point of view. I just tapped into the main line of ancient wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so I'm taking us a little bit off track right now, but it's just a fun conversation. I just finished a book called Dopamine Nation. Have you heard of this book?
I have heard of it. I've not read in or it.
So good. So good. And I mean, if you think about kind of us as a country right now, billions of dollars are being spent on marketing gambling towards us, or direct to consumer medications, or you have the pornography industry, or the social media industry, or streaming industry. And so the food industry. And so it's really, really fascinating. The news, right? We know that if we keep people agitated, frustrated, scared, worried, anxious, they're going to come back. And so, so it was a really interesting kind of look on the environment and kind of the waters we're swimming in. And in some ways, some of those excesses of those industries and the power some of those industries have, especially when we know that, some of those things don't lead to good things, whether it's alcohol or cannabis or whatever it is. So we as humans are kind of like swimming through these multi-billion-dollar ad campaigns directly geared towards us. And you got to curate that. You got to be careful. You got to be aware. But that whole notion of excess and that whole notion of like being out of balance, I think in some ways we've let things get a little bit out of balance of what's probably healthy for us. Whether you look at the food system in Europe versus the United States, I mean, there's just it's a fascinating read for listeners. And Rob, I hope you check it out. It's very, very good.
I wrote it down. I will check into that. It's something I'm really curious about. What was last year? They had the heads of these businesses that do social media apps all together.
Oh, yeah.
Called Washington. And do you remember, to a person, they all said they will not let their kids use social media?
Yeah. I mean, it's addictive, and billions of dollars are being spent. I think I was listening to a book this morning, and in that the author quotes Reed Hastings from Netflix, and Reed said something to the effect of, in 2017, one of our greatest competitors is sleep. So we're trying to keep you from sleeping.
Social media is the big tobacco of this generation, Scott.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Yeah. And so,
all right. So we're way over here.
Yeah. Okay. Developing leaders. What else do we need to have on the radar?
Self-awareness. How does your operating system work? What are the hacks? What are the cheat codes?
Yeah.
One. Two. One of my best coaching techniques is so simple. Identify someone who's really good at what you want to get better at.
Yeah.
Use them as a positive role model. Observe them in action.
Yeah.
Approach them and ask them if you can take them to lunch, buy them a coffee, pick their brain.
Yeah.
Learn from the people around you.
Yep. Who are those thinking partners? Who's mastered it themselves? Who models that beautifully? Are you surrounding yourself with those individuals? Seeking those individuals out. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So that's another thing. And then the third thing, I mean, self-awareness, understand myself, watching good role models. The rubber meets the road with behavior. All right. So now you've got to, in this sort of way. Then the little reminders and those kind of tools that you talked about, those are helpful, but you also have to develop some behavioral skill. And that means you got to start doing this stuff. You got to practice.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets scary. It's scary because it can feel risky,
Yeah.
I've relied on this set of tools. It's got me this far. I know it worked to some degree. Maybe it's not working as well as it could, but boy, this stuff over here is so untested.
Yeah.
So a lot of the coaching and development there, let's identify fairly low risk opportunities to experiment.
Yeah.
And this can run the gamut. Like, I remember one guy was scared to death of really delegating responsibility to his team.
Yep.
For all the usual reasons.
Yep.
I said, well, let's start with this. Why don't you let the kids pick which restaurant you go to this weekend? Why don't you let your wife pick what we're going to stream tonight? I mean, we literally started on square one with this guy. Low risk, not a lot at stake. See how it goes. And then, of course, we ramped up to bring it to work.
Yeah, you might end up at Chick-fil-A, but that's okay. Just sit with it and be. Well,
and tell me, did you enjoy the chicken tenders?
Yeah. And they probably did. Well, yes. And I think not enough people view work as an opportunity to practice. And, so I think people are at work right now, millions, billions of them, but are they practicing anything? Is anything on their radar, large or small, as an opportunity to, again, okay, I'm going to pause before we jump forward. I'm going to pause. I'm going to ask the team, what's the downside of this decision? And whatever it is, we have 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, many of us. There's an opportunity to practice. And so I love that you're bringing that into the coaching. And I love that you're also making it small. Like, we're not trying to shift your behavior overnight, but you're in the game at least, right?
Yeah, you're getting in. Let's start in the shallow end.
Well, I mean, it's no different than, I think, back to our conversation around sports. If I want to create a football player, where do I start? If I want to create a baseball player, where do I start? I don't start in some places that we start sometimes in leadership education, talking about systems and such. Well, that's completely the wrong, that's the 747 that, let's start with a Cessna and kind of build our way up.
Let's stack up to the big stuff, guys.
My freshman leadership class on complexity, Ugh. Oh.
Well, that's part of it. And there's any number of examples I could throw out there, but I think the point is made. Scott, I have had the privilege of working with a number of extraordinarily capable and also a number of extraordinarily incapable of senior people in my career. And I have respect for all of them. I mean, it sounds judgmental, but what I mean by saying that is I've seen a wide spectrum of senior execs and their development challenges. I want to say this. We talked about 3 things you got to do to become a great personal leader.
Yeah.
But there's a 4th thing I want to talk about, and I think it underlies all of it.
Okay.
It comes down to identity and how you see yourself.
Okay. Say more. I'm intrigued.
Okay. Well, what drives a person to overdo this behavior and avoid that behavior?
Yeah.
Well, in part, is they have an over-idealized conception of these behaviors. Let's say it's forceful, it's driving, it's getting results, racking up points. That's the premium. And I'm a winner. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I'm not a loser. I'm not namby-pamby. So they under-idealize the other side.
Yeah.
And in that process, they over-identify with the preferred side, and they disidentify with the other side.
Yeah.
And I always notice this. The thing they identify with, they describe in glowing terms.
Wow.
Other side, though, it's not fair and balanced. They describe in pejorative terms. It's more of a caricature.
Yes. I just had a leader, a potential coach, a potential engagement that I was having a conversation with my entry point into the organization yesterday. And she said that this leader views education and leader development as just touchy-feely. That, we don't want touchy-feely, right? So is that an example of someone who's...
It is. Dead giveaway.
Right?
Dead giveaway. when I'm mentoring our coaches, through our system here at Kaiser, That's one of the things I sensitize them. Look for the language they use. The term I use is look for where the bad attitude is.
Yeah. Exactly. Because you're exactly, I mean, yes, it is not all about touchy-feely, but you know what? Self-awareness. And what I said to her was, well, there's real numbers behind what happens when someone isn't skilled at the touchy-feely stuff. Being able to build a relationship with another human being. There's real numbers behind the downsides of that, right?
But Scott, all the data in the world is not going to convince somebody.
Yeah. No, you're probably exactly right. Some folks it will not, for sure. Yeah.
They have to have a lived experience for the tumblers to fall into place. And look, can I give you an example?
Yeah, please.
One of my favorite coaching techniques early on in the relationship, try to suss out their mindset and those identity attachments. This is a real person, a very senior guy, a global company. He ran a big chunk of business, very successful track record. Former D1 college athlete, about 6'4", broad shoulders, jutting jaw, the whole pack. Got the image?
Yeah, I do. I have the picture, yes.
I said, Rick, what one thing more than anything else do you think great leaders do? And he said, that's easy, Rob. The best leaders bring a brutal width of clarity. A brutal width of clarity. What do you mean by that? Well, they're crystal clear on what we're going to do, what we're not going to do. They call balls and strikes, and they let you know where you stand, even if it's not very tall.
Okay.
Got it. What's the opposite of that? Oh, that's that go along to get along, wouldn't stick your neck out for nobody kind of gutless leader. Well, that doesn't sound very good. No, it's not good. And if I'm honest with you, Rob, that's probably the number one source of inefficiency in the global economy. These managers who lack courage. Well, gosh, Rick, I've worked with a lot of executives. I've never had one of them tell me, I'm kind of a go along to get along leader.
Yeah.
So let me try this again. Of course, it's important to be clear with people. But what's the other good thing for a leader to also do? Like yin and yang. It's not like, night's good, day's bad. You need both in a lunar cycle.
Yeah.
What you need is a balanced leadership approach. And this really sharp guy just gave me this blank stare. The wheels were turning. Smoke was coming out of his ears, but he couldn't come up with a good thing that was in contrast to brutal clarity. So after that awkward pause, I said, look, you absolutely have to be clear, especially if people aren't measuring up. You need to level with them.
Yeah.
But I'm also thinking there might be a place for maybe some tact and diplomacy, so
every once in a while.
so they can hear what you're saying without getting hung up in how you're saying it. And this is what he said. He said, yeah, tact, I've been given that feedback before, but I still believe in brutal clarity.
Wow.
So what's happening? He sees himself as a tough guy.
Yeah.
That's his identity. He's a tough guy.
Yep. And it's a long created pathway in his mind, right? So how do you even begin? And so as we begin to kind of wind down this conversation, Rob, we need to have another conversation. But how do you think about beginning to, chip away might not be the right phrase, but chip away at the kind of the grip that identity has on his ability to connect with a wider spectrum of people? I mean, how do you think about that?
Let me tell you the code of Rick's story, because I think it's in there.
Yeah.
So, fast forward, he did the Leadership Versatility Index 360, got feedback, shocked. People thought he was too forceful. So, all right, he's kind of... And we put together some development goals, and he could tell his heart wasn't full. He recognized that's what they wanted more of and less of from him, but he's kind of going through the motions.
Yeah.
The breakthrough happened about a month later. He came to a coaching session and he says, Rob, this soft stuff is the hardest stuff of all in leadership, and I major in hard stuff. He finally turned it over enough in his head to where he could define that other side in terms that he could relate to and see himself behaving in a way that was genuine, authentic, him.
Yeah.
But the thing is, look, you or I could have told him what the other thing was. We could have told him he needed to do it. Then I'd be coaching for compliance.
Yeah.
He just had to get all up and create some, discomfort and then have his head turning until he could come up with the right answer. So now I can coach for commitment to a more expanded and capable version of Rick.
I love it.
Yeah. He authored.
Well, I think of the Amy Edmondson quote where she says, the soft skills are the hard skills. So you just had to convince him that these are the hard things.
That was the beauty of it. Really, it's like jujitsu. I didn't convince him.
You used his energy to,
I provoked the heck out of him. I was poking at him. But that was just to keep him in that space of dissonance and trying to get it all to add up so he would come up with his own definition of better.
Wow. Well, Rob, we need to do this again. We need to do this again. I mean, I have loved this conversation. And I mean, as you think about just the conversation we've had so far, what do you think is the practical wisdom for listeners? What stands out for you? What do you want them to take away from this conversation?
Well, practical wisdom, phronesis, the name of your pod. I'm going to go back to something I earlier said, maybe underscore it. Know thyself. Nothing in excess. Surety brings ruin.
Right? I mean, they knew these things back then. Which brings me to the whole other part of it. Maybe we'll start our next conversation with the human condition of, these concepts have been around for years. And so how do we as humans better live into them? I mean, it's a fascinating puzzle. It really, really is. But I love those three. And I appreciate you bringing those to my attention today. Those are awesome. Maybe that's what we'll call the episode. The three things you need to have on your radar to start.
Ancient wisdom with Scott.
Exactly. Oh, well, sir.
Scott, I want to say thanks a lot for having me on. And gosh, if you'd like to have me back, this has been a kick in the pants. I always enjoy talking with you. So put it on the dance card.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Be well. We'll do it again.
Take good care.
Thank you so much for listening to Practical Wisdom for Leaders, the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. Be sure to leave a rating, share this episode with someone in your network, and visit the show notes for links, references, and additional resources. You can also subscribe to the Practical Wisdom for Leaders newsletters for more insights and resources. Link is in the show notes. I lead retreats for senior leadership teams, conduct engaging workshops, and deliver inspiring keynotes for organizations across industries. To learn more, visit www.scottjallen.net. Until next time, keep changing lives.